Welcome to the Daily Insider here on Vegas Insider. I am Kevin Rogers. Monday, January 31st, 2022. And guess what? We have a Super Bowl matchup. Super Bowl 56 coming up in Los Angeles at SoFi Stadium 2 weeks from yesterday, February the 13th. It's the Rams and the Bengals meeting up, just like everyone predicted before the season started, that Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals, who won 4 games last year, would be playing in the Super Bowl. The Rams, not a crazy notion, but now back-to-back years that we've seen one of the teams in the Super Bowl playing in their home stadium. So pretty crazy stuff. Dave Sharapan will join us in just a moment. We have him on every Monday during NFL season, former oddsmaker, and this is actually a great time to have him on because he knows all about making the odds and making the lines for the Super Bowl. So we'll talk about that with him coming up in just a moment. Before we get to Dave, do want to tell you all about BetMGM. They are the king of sports books. They are live in Louisiana now, also in New York. So they picked up a few states recently, and BetMGM offers a welcome bonus for casino and sportsbook new users. Enter the bonus code VIBONUS for a $25 no deposit free casino game plus a 100% deposit match up to $1,000. Enter VIBONUS on the BetMGM Sportsbook app to receive a $1,000 risk-free bet for your first wager. And again, BetMGM among the states they are legal in, New York and Louisiana of late. So if you are in Louisiana, you're a fan of Joe Burrow, his days at LSU, you can bet on the Bengals now if you want to at BetMGM. But check them out now. They are the king of sports books. Let's bring him on. He's wearing his Bengals gear. He's wearing the glasses. He's all set. Dave Sharapan joining us here on the Daily Insider. And Dave, the Bengals, they did it. They got over the hump. They beat the top seed Tennessee Titans in the second round. They beat a lot of people who thought it was the number 1 seed, who ended up being the 2 seed Kansas City. Just before we get to the odds for the Super Bowl, I thought the Bengals had no shot to win that game before it was 21-3. Then it was 21-3. You're like, forget about it. But how impressed were you with how the Bengals played, came back, and won that game?
Who did the Bengals beat in the first round?
They beat your Las Vegas Raiders.
I couldn't even remember. That's how I'm sitting here thinking about it, and I'm like, they beat the Raiders. How long ago was that game? Because it feels like it was so long ago that it's a different team. They beat the Raiders at home, who had a chance to win or tie the game on the last play. They go to Tennessee and win in overtime. They go to Kansas City and win in overtime. And Joe Burrow, all he does is just show up wearing some crazy glasses, some great jackets, this gold chain, or whatever that thing is around his neck, taking names and moving on. And I'm all for it. I love it. I mean, we're hearkening back to January 1989 when the Bengals were in the Super Bowl last. The only thing missing was the dance partner, Kev. I thought we were getting the Niners there. I thought we were going to have a throwback Super Bowl. I was bringing out all the things. Listen, I graduated high school in 1988. I remember that Super Bowl. I had the Bengals in plus the points. I was all fired up. I'm like, yeah, baby, we're going to talk about this. And then we got the Rams come back from down 17-7. And now we got a whole nother narrative to talk about. We got Joe Burrow on one side, Joe Cool, the quarterback named Joe, for all the Jimmys and the Joes. I had the line all set up. All the Jimmys and the Joes were going to be the Super Bowl. But now we got a Matt. I can't believe it.
Staying on this game for a second, Dave, before we look at the Rams and Niners, how surprised were you the play of Patrick Mahomes and some of the mental mistakes, end of the half? They throw it to Tyreek Hill in the flat, no timeouts, time runs out on them, should have kicked the field goal. The interception was terrible. He was running around like he was playing in the park, and there were guys just waiting to catch a ball. He was just running. He ran for 100-something yards just behind the line of scrimmage. But what do you think about the Chiefs and how they couldn't close things out yesterday?
I don't know if it was just a lack of understanding that you still needed to score. You did not have enough points, and they let the Bengals hang around and hang around and hang around. And I went and rewatched a little bit of it today. I'm going to watch the rest of it tonight. But the play before the half, what are you doing? Kick the field goal. After he throws the ball into the ground, there's 5 seconds left. Take 3. This I don't know if it's just, I don't know if it's cockiness, if it's assuredness, if it's just from being too damn good, where you go, we're going to go for the touchdown. We're getting a ball to start the second half. We don't need the 3 points. We're going to score or get nothing now. We're good with it. Man, I mean, you got to get the points while you can. So the takeaway is like, it's so hard to repeat just to get there, let alone win it twice in a row. So hard. We've seen it now. It's been forever since somebody's done it. I don't know. I mean, we had so much stuff happen over the weekend. You know, Brady retired. Mahomes doesn't get back to the Super Bowl. It's just one of those things. I mean, I don't know what the play call was, but I thought that play started the momentum, and then, you know, Burrow and the Bengals scored, went for 2, made it. If they don't make it there, maybe they don't win. Great stuff.
What about one more note with Cincinnati and what they've done in the playoffs so far, Dave? You mentioned the Raiders game. They could have blown them out, or it felt like that they kept getting limited to field goals in that game. Derek Carr had the interception late. Raiders were driving to tie it, didn't tie it. Tannehill had the late pick. Bengals went down, and they kicked the game-winning field goal. Then yesterday, the Chiefs had you would have thought that would have been the time Kansas City would have scored the go-ahead touchdown, just won in regulation. Cincinnati's been living on the edge a little bit. Great story. I am not taking away from what Burrow and the Bengals have done, but they have lived on the edge for 3 straight weeks.
No doubt. And I thought the same thing. Even, you know, watching it live, I'm like, wow, it's coming to an end. I mean, at least they're covering. That's at least what I was thinking. I wasn't thinking in terms of wins and losses, but you had 1st and goal. The Chiefs were going in. Like it was done. And then questionable play, good play, 3rd down. They sit back and what they rush? 3 people? And they sat back with 8. And Mahomes sat there and looked, and nobody's open. He's running side to side. Takes a sack in that spot. Doesn't even throw the ball. I mean, he almost fumbled the game away. I don't know. He didn't look himself in the second half, and I don't know if it was, had he been hit and he didn't want to keep getting hit, or he really thought sometimes you can be too good for your own good because you can do things that normal people can't do or see, and you're the only one that can see it. So crazy stuff.
So the first 11 games of the playoffs, the team that won, spread didn't matter. Finally, the 49ers plus 3.5. They cover with a favorite winning straight up. It's time to transition now.
Yes.
Okay, the Vince Ferragamo hat.
That's it.
So the Rams end up coming back 17-7 down. They beat the 49ers. Is there disappointment on the side of, when you look at San Francisco and say, man, you guys were up 10 after you stole the Green Bay game and you threw away this game on the road?
I think there's tremendous disappointment there was people that had Niners futures that were super live going into this game. I would argue they still have the best defense. It's in the NFC. That's not, obviously they're not playing, but they had that game. You never salted away. You see it in the AFC. We just saw 2 games where Patrick Mahomes had never lost a game being down or being up 15 points or more, or something like that. Like I just heard that this morning on ESPN. It's crazy. The Rams look done. All the Niners had to do was just churn out a couple first downs, maybe have one of the best postseason kickers in all time, Robbie Gould, former Penn State guy, just kick another field goal. We're good. They can't get another point. They keep going 3 and out. You give this other team too many shots, they're going to score. And the game stayed under, but no Cooper Kupp prop stayed under. We talked about it last night on the show we did with you. Incredible. I thought the Rams comeback, when I was watching it live, I'm like, this team's winning the Super Bowl. Everything is in place. Now they get the home game. And they got through what they needed to get through. They have the adversity. And you just get the feeling that Donald, his 99 number, he ain't going to let him lose. And a single 9, Stafford, it's been put in this spot. He put himself in this spot, whatever you want to call it. But now he got OBJ. He got Cooper Kupp. He ain't going to have Higbee. I don't think Higbee's going to be able to play. He looked like he got hurt. Like seriously. But it's all there. And I was watching it going, his team's winning the Super Bowl.
So the opening numbers out last night. Rams open laying 3.5. The number's up to 4. Total dropped a little bit. It was 49.5, 50. At BetMGM, it's 49. But you've been in the room plenty of times, the risk room, as I like to call it. What's going through the minds of everyone going into that, going into late Sunday? Niners, we're going to go to the Super Bowl. Rams come back and win it. I know you guys have lines already going into the championship games of who's going to go. Did a lot of that change after what you saw on Sunday, or pretty much stayed consistent?
I think it stayed pretty consistent. I don't think we saw anything that – I mean, it's funny because if it was the Chiefs, the Rams would have probably been dogs. Would have been small, but the Rams would have been dogs, and now they're 4-point favorites, open 3.5. Immediate money bet on the Rams, rightly so. Another unique situation of the team playing in their own stadium. Last year, I don't think odds makers factored it enough. The Chiefs were favored. Chiefs were going to be favored over the Rams in their stadium this year. Maybe. It was a big debate going into the game with some of my buddies and myself, just make it pick. You make the Chiefs favored, they're going to bet them, but the Rams are better. They got a better defense, blah, blah, blah. The conversations were endless, and then it didn't come to fruition. So this one was pretty easy to make. I think the total's the one that I think is going to be, again, a real kind of divide, because when you look at it based on watching the games and really diving into the numbers, it's dead under. It's a dead under game, but it's a Super Bowl. Who wants to bet the game under? Nobody bets the game under, Kevin.
That's 3 straight unders now going into this game in the Super Bowl, Dave. And one of them, Chiefs-Niners, it stayed under the high total, but you had that late Mahomes touchdown. But the other 2, 31-9 last year, and then the 13-6 Rams, or 13-3 Rams, Patriots a few years ago. So you had some of these powerful offenses that did nothing in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and that's the ones I remember. I mean, even that it was going to be Chiefs-Niners possibility. That we just saw that a couple years ago, right? And that game stayed under, I believe. Yep. So it's a dead under. It's an inflated number. I mean, even when you do the number, you're always like, all right, yeah, but it's a Super Bowl. You do that. You never do that for any game in any sport. Oh, but it's the World Series. Nope. Oh, it's the Stanley Cup Finals. Nope. It's just another game. Even the NBA Finals. You don't go, oh, it's the NBA Finals. No. Super Bowl is the only one. It's the only one where you go, yeah, but it's a Super Bowl. So you got to maybe add a little something to it. Maybe put a little extra on it. Just because the volume is the greatest. The other thing ain't nobody talking about in the room is how much the books have a head start with these Bengals futures. There ain't nobody in the world. There's only, some people may have bought some tickets, small tickets and stuff for their friends or somebody when they're in from out of town or buying a ticket on the Bengals to win the Super Bowl. I would venture to say that the Bengals were one of the 3 least amount of tickets on an NFL team to win the Super Bowl this entire season. And they have more games than everybody. It wasn't like 2 weeks ago people were buying Bengals futures, even at the decent price that it was. Certainly nobody buying it last year at this time or even in August when we were going into the season. So you got a nice head start on the Super Bowl, on this game on both sides. I mean, it's easily 5 or it's easily 6 figures. It might be 7 figures in a lot of books rooms where you're like, well, we win at least $1 million. It don't matter who wins. Those are this is the only situation like that as well.
What do you think the handle will be? You have an LA team. The Bengals are really interesting because they're not the Chiefs, they're not the Patriots, but yet Joe Burrow won a Heisman, a national championship in the last few years. So obviously, very recognizable quarterback for a lot of people. But what do you think the handle is going to be? Or it's just every year, Dave, it's just going to go up because of how popular the Super Bowl is?
Well, it's going to be good because it's competitive. If we had a 7-point spread, it might be less. But we got a 4-point spread and a total at least 49 now, close to 50. I mean, we need scoring. Nobody wants to see, 9.5 and 37.5. You just don't do as much handle on those games. So that being said, with it being competitive, we'll do well. Obviously, if it was Rams Chiefs, it would be the dream. That was the one that both, books, the NFL, everybody was rooting for that because it's the Chiefs, and there would have been more points and there would have been more whatever. But that's why I want to hype up Joe B and the Bengals. I mean, I'd love to see this thing grow. It's going to be big, obviously. It's a lot of states' first Super Bowl. The states that just kind of came on board. Will there be the type of buzz, maybe party-wise and all this other stuff because it's the Bengals? Maybe in certain areas. Would it have been more if it was Chiefs, Rams? Yes. But that's okay. It's still the Super Bowl. And again, we'll have props out the wazoo. And at least on all the I mean, Chase though on the Bengals side, I think we'll have some hype. I think it'll be there. It's going to be good.
I want to give you this little nugget, just to throw this out at you, Dave, just to counter what you said. I had to look this up out of curiosity. You said, teams laying 7-8 in the Super Bowl and it's not competitive. Last 4 times that we've seen a dog of 5 or more in the Super Bowl, the dog has covered all 5 times, or all 4 times rather.
Oh, for sure they cover, but people don't bet them.
Mm-hmm.
Like they just or what they do, they make the mistake, not the mistake, but they choose to bet them on the money line and not take the points. They always just give me the higher payout. And so they take them on the money line. I mean, I'm glad it's less than a touchdown. Anything less than a touchdown, you do good numbers on. And then anything less than a field goal, you do amazing numbers on. I mean, I'll never forget the Chiefs and the Niners Super Bowl. The hype leading up in that room, and literally multiple times a day, we had people coming up with suitcases full of cash or sending us bank wires, wanted to make 6-figure bets on that on both sides. We were 1.5, we would go to 2. Somebody would come in on a 2. We would go back to 1.5. So you won't see much line movement though. And you definitely won't see it go below 3.5 again. That's for sure.
Did you like making props going into the week? Can you tell the audience how or the process goes with these hundreds of props now that are out there, and how you guys are putting them together and getting them ready for later in the week?
It was crazy because the first year that I did it, it was just kind of like, come up with some props, guys. We'll see you later. And left me and 3 other guys in the room. And I was like, all right, so what do you guys do? Like, because I've never really done this specifically. The guy said to me, do the cross sport props. So I was like, all right, I looked, I'm like, oh, Ovechkin's playing the Capitals. All right, how many shots on goals he get? How many field goals are going to be in the game? Oh, okay. And then you've got to try to come up with stuff. And now with the proliferation of books all over the place and the amount of people doing it, I mean, because the boys at the Westgate, I mean, they originated it, Jay and Murray and Ed and Jeff. I mean, they've taken it to another level here in town. And we used to go for a lot of years hey, just let them do this. This is their thing. And kind of not just kind of let them have it. And then we're like, wait a second, doing it $1 zillion in handle on this stuff. We should probably try to do it a little bit more. So then I'm in the room and I'm looking at the last year I did it. The Oklahoma City Thunder played against I forget who. And I was like, all right, team rebounding props. Let's see. Oklahoma City Thunder is going to be about 42. Ooh, that might be the number of pass attempts by the quarterback. Oh, 43. All right, make that a prop. And then you just kind of look at it. You go, all right, how many times is this going to happen? How many times is this going to happen? All right, make this slightly favor. Which way are they going to bet? Move it a little bit more, turn it on. And then the fun part was when you turned everything on and the bad guys saw your work and you were taking maybe 2 dimes a pop or even a dime. Well, 30 seconds in, the ink isn't even dry. Boom, here comes the bet. And they're like, all right, move it. And you move it, and they bet it again. And they bet it again. And you're like, huh. The rebounding prop was the one I'll never forget because they bet against it. They told me my number was wrong. It was a lopsided decision. After, seriously, 15 minutes, the director goes, I hope you're really right about that prop. I said, I told you, relax. We're going to get there. Don't worry about it. Ended up being a 10, over 10 dime decision, and we won it. So I got trust the next year. They're like, hey, let Dave do the crossboard props. And we were all fine. So, but it's fun. It's a fun. The process is hard. The actual taking the bets is the fun part.
What's the most money you've seen someone bet on the coin toss?
$50,000. 50 times. The guy was at one of the properties and we were in the risk room and they called over and said, there's a guy here who wants to bet 50,000 on the coin toss. And I heard the call. It was beside me. I'm like, first of all, check to see if that guy's not too drunk. Make sure he's serious right now. That's $50,000. Did he say 50 times 50? And the guy was like, yeah, he said 50. Looked over at the director, and it's fun. The weird part sometimes about being in the risk room on a Super Bowl day is that like all the bigwigs come in, all the executives, and they all want to sit there and make the calls that you've been making 364. The one day they're in the room, they're like, well, I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't take that bet. And you're like, man, just go leave until the game starts, and then we'll tell you what happens. But the one guy was there, and he's like, what do we normally take on the Super Bowl coin toss? We all looked over at him like, pretty much whatever you want. He's laying -1. We had -102. He goes, well, do you take it? We're like, if the guy wants to bet it, take it. Took the bet. After the coin toss, the guy won. We graded it. And the kid, this is one guy's job. Actually, you kind of pair it up. 2 guys would grade these props. And then a lot of times the bosses would want to know, how do we stand? How'd that one do? What happened there? So we all knew. Nobody wanted to say a word. When we graded it, it was tails. It was tails. Graded. You're stuck 50,000. I'm sitting in my terminal on my computer, and I'm looking. I'm like, oh, that one hurt. I mean, there was multiple bets. We lost like 70. I think it was like 70,000 or something. And the game hadn't started yet. And the one guy goes, how bad was it? And he goes, we're stuck 70 and the game hasn't kicked off yet. And it was just like dead silence after that. It was just dead silence. And then we all ran to the bathroom, right? We had time now. And the one guy said to me, I'm quitting. If this guy's going to ask after every prop how we're doing, I'm quitting here on the spot. But we were dying. It was great. But yeah, got one guy 50,000. He didn't lay the juice though. It was -102. He bet 50,000 flat.
What's the most surprised you've been watching a Super Bowl in the risk room out of all of them over the years? I don't know if it's Patriots, Giants, or which one it is, but which one were you the most surprised with seeing how this unfolded? You're like, ooh, I didn't see this one coming.
Patriots Giants was pretty good. The first one.
Yep.
The first one. That was because there were sharpest guys in the world couldn't wait to lay that money line on the Patriots. I mean, they were just coming in, laying it. It was a shoe-in. They were going to win that game. I mean, that was a double-digit spread, and that was easy, right? And then it wasn't. I can tell you the one that the result when the Patriots intercepted that ball from Russell Wilson. Nobody even wanted to go to work the next day because that was such a decision for the books. Like the book needed Seattle, And that was, we were going to just walk it in the end zone ourselves. I mean, just give it to Marshawn Lynch and walk it in. So there was a lot of explosion and yelling and swearing at the end of that one. One of the best ones of all time was the safety. When the safety was the first score of the game, will there be a safety? Yes, no. That's an interest-free payment from wise guys. Every year they come in, they bet the no. And then the couple years that it happened, they cry the blues. But they're the ones laying 1,400, so there's no sympathy for them. But I was out front when the ball went over Manning's head. Seattle got a safety. The number was 100-1 that it would be the first score or something. And there was just screaming. There was a lot of money lost on that prop. And there was a hoot and hollering out in the book that was one of those moments that I'll never forget. There's so many over the years. I got a list of them with each game. That was one of the best ones yet.
What's the craziest prop you can remember hitting from a Super Bowl?
Well, I didn't hit it myself, but I was with a guy that did. Devin Hester returned the opening kickoff for the Bears. And Devin Hester was a good kick returner, and a kid I was working with was a Bears fan. And they kicked him the ball, and he took off. And I'm sitting in my chair watching the game. Because once the Super Bowl starts, there's nothing to bet on. It's actually one of the few events you can kind of sit and enjoy, try to watch the commercials, but you're watching the crowd and you're watching the game. So the kick goes up and he starts running behind me, this kid. He's like, he got a 25-1 ticket for $40. He's going to win a dime. He's going to win $1,000. And he goes to the house, and this kid, I thought he was going to leave and go collect his ticket right then. And when I'm like, hey, man, you can't pick this up until after the game. You got to stay here at least and work the halftime. But it was awesome because we were like, go. And then he was gone. And this kid looked like he had just run. He wasn't, not that he was in bad shape. He just wasn't an athlete. And he was running that whole way with Hester. He was out of breath, and he was picking up $1,000. It was a great, great story. Not a great end result for him and the Bears, but a fun prop nonetheless.
I remember that. And Devin Hester, who was an outstanding kick returner, returns after a touchdown. And then think about it, if you had the Colts, still no problem. Laying 7, it's fine. They still killed him.
No, and it's funny now because a lot of my memories of the Super Bowls doing the in-game. The in-game has changed everything. I was the in-game guy for the last few Super Bowls, and I was the only one working in the room other than the halftime. And I'm sitting there sweating every play. I'm moving a number. I'm watching the game. And like, Dave, you want pizza? I'm like, I'm working. You guys, can one of you maybe turn on the wrist monitor so I can go to the bathroom real fast? And they're like, no, you got it. So I think now, like I'm looking back and thinking about like that game, the amount of Rams money or Colts money we had already taken with the in game, it would have been, they got down on the opening kickoff, and now you could get them. Let's see, that game closed. Let me see here. 2004. Colts were -7. They were down off the opening kickoff. The total was 47. And that would have adjusted the number, both side and total. And it would have been a deluge of money on the Colts, probably some more money on the over. The over didn't get there because the game finished 28-17, but all that Colts money. So it's a different dynamic now. It's so much fun.
How hard is that to do the in-game, or is it just you get into a rhythm and do it? I mean, especially in the Super Bowl because everyone's got their eye on it. But do you enjoy that, going through the in-game and watching the game and adjusting the number?
Was one of my favorite things to do because we had the same information. It was your information and my information was the same. We're watching the game together. Now, I would turn the delay off because I didn't think it was fair to the bettor. So I would turn the delay off and let you fire. The commercial breaks were forever. The volume was amazing. It was, doing the in game for a game, a random NBA game between, the Thunder and the Nuggets on a Tuesday in February. that sucked because there was nobody betting it. I was like, what am I doing this for? But it was just practice, and it was, maybe somebody would walk in or log in and want to bet it. But the Super Bowl was easy because you had people betting nonstop. The volume was fantastic. And I kept it simple. I just did side total money line, when I did it because of the system limitations that I had. Now, with all these props, and they have in-game prop betting. In-game, you can bet number of receptions in the third quarter. I'm fascinated with the whole thing. I watch the games like that all the time now. Even my kids will be watching a game, and they're like, what are you looking at? I'm like, I'm looking at the lines. Like, why? You don't have to anymore. I'm like, no, I do, because this is what I look at every day anyway. So I think it's fun. I think it adds a whole new dynamic to it. I just don't recommend getting too deep in it if you really want to enjoy the Super Bowl and all the libations and all the wonderful food that goes along with the parties and stuff, because you may end up clicking the wrong buttons, and it's not the same experience.
Dave Sharapan, always great to talk to you out in Las Vegas. You could find him on Twitter at SportsBKConsig. And big 2 weeks coming up, and I know of all the hype. And one last thing I'll ask you before I let you go. Do you think there is a disadvantage for the Rams not having to travel for the Super Bowl?
There is a distraction. Yes, there 100% is a distraction by being at home and everything that goes along with that. Tom Brady just retired over the weekend because he's going to spend more time with his family and all this other stuff. There's a lot of things happening that they probably don't even know about. And now it's Super Bowl week, and they're going to be pulled apart and doing all this other stuff and still being at home. Sometimes the road warriors is a good thing. I tell the kids that all the time. Like, when we go on a road trip, it's different. When we're at home, I got to try to create that kind of atmosphere. I think the Rams will be fine, but I think at least when that media obligation comes about, I think it's going to be a bit of a challenge for sure.
Dave Sharapan, always great talking to you, and we appreciate it. And we'll talk to you again soon. Getting closer to the Super Bowl, one football game left of the season.
Then we got to worry about this basketball, Kevin. I don't know what we're going to do, but we got to really focus on the basketball after this football for sure.
Yeah, you got to make sure you watch that Summit and Missouri Valley leagues.
I'll let you do that. You're in charge of that. You're in charge of that, K-Raj, not me.
I'll give you some insight on that one if you need it.
Dave,
thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.
See you later.
All right. There is Dave Sharapan. Always great talking to Dave. And, he's got truly great insights on the way things go in the risk room out in Las Vegas in the back of these sports books. And they got a lot of work to do, these odds makers, with the props coming out. So many things. It just gets overwhelming after a while. I'm really curious to see, too, the longest field goal made and how many field goals you'll have, just because Evan McPherson has been unbelievable in the postseason for the Bengals. And now there's no weather to worry about. You're kicking in a controlled environment at SoFi Stadium. You kind of say, all right, just go with the over, longest field goal, even over field goals. Because the Bengals, before Sunday, they had their issues scoring touchdowns in the first two rounds. And then they got some touchdowns yesterday. But you wonder, Rams are really good defensively, how they'll respond coming up in a few weeks. Draftkings in the championship series, that GOAT, he is now in Louisiana. He was in New York for a little bit. He had his fun. He went to Times Square. He had a slice of Sbarro pizza. I think he even stopped at TGI Fridays for a bite. But he's wearing that crown proudly, and he's made his way down to Louisiana because he probably is not only rooting for Joe Burrow to win the Super Bowl, but also he wants to tell everyone about the DraftKings Championship Series. You can be the GOAT just like him. The DraftKings Championship Series is the ultimate competition of contest winners from daily fantasy sports, sportsbook, and casino. The one and only place you can compete in the king of competitions. The best of the best in each domain will compete for series supremacy in their own domain's tournament of champions. They'll have one goal in mind: win the ultimate crown and earn the title of the greatest of all time, the GOAT. That's right. He's going to Louisiana. He's going to go to New Orleans, maybe Shreveport. He's not really sure. His itinerary is up in the air, but he's wearing the crown. He's the GOAT. You can be the GOAT too. Check out DraftKings.com for more details. All right, let's take a look at some of the NBA for tonight, because I know past the NFL, there's still other things going on. We have 2 weeks until our next football game. Speaking of Louisiana, the Pelicans, they are in Cleveland tonight to take on the Cavaliers. Brandon Ingram has been out for a few games, ankle injury. Last time the Pelicans played the Cavaliers, they came back and beat them at home 108-104 back in late December as 4.5-point underdogs. Game went over the total of 210 barely. New Orleans has dropped 3 in a row, and during this span, they're 1-3 without Ingram. So that kind of coincides. They're losing at home to the Nuggets and the Celtics. Cleveland was up 15-0 out of the chute at Detroit last night. They ended up losing that game 115-105 to the Pistons. So a bit of an inexcusable loss for Cleveland. They're 1-4 ATS the last 5. But the Cavs, though, they have been rolling at home of late, beating the Bucks. They also beat the Knicks. They beat the Nets during this span. Last home loss came back in early January against Memphis, but Cleveland here laying 7.5 against New Orleans. The Clippers and the Pacers tonight. And look, LA got to give them a lot of credit. 26-26 without their 2 best players. Kawhi Leonard hasn't suited up yet this year. Paul George is out with an elbow injury. But the Clippers, they pound the Hornets on Sunday, 115-90 as 6-point dogs. They've covered 4 in a row on their road trip. They also are 7-1 against the spread their last 8. They had that big comeback against Washington. They barely covered in a loss at Miami. And this is a long trip that ends tonight in Indianapolis against the Pacers, who they beat right before this long road trip, 139-133 at Crypto.com Arena. Back 2 weeks ago, game easily went over the total of 211. Tonight's total of 220.5. Indiana won at Oklahoma City Friday, was blown out by Dallas on Saturday, 132-105. They got Sabonis back, which is good, but the Pacers still dealing with a lot of injuries. And Indiana, they've lost a few in a row at home. Last time they were at home, they gave up 158 to Charlotte, so that's no good. But they're a short favorite tonight against the Clippers. Memphis flipped to a favorite tonight because Joel Embiid won't play. So both games, Philadelphia faces Memphis this year, because they'll play them again tonight. Embiid sat out both of them, and the Grizzlies blew out the 76ers the first time without Embiid. Now they play him again in Philadelphia. Grizzlies 35-17, Sixers at 30-19. Memphis just keeps rolling. 20-point win over Washington on Saturday, 10-point win over Utah. They just an unbelievable job by the Grizzlies, and they keep doing it. Philadelphia held off Sacramento on Saturday, 103-101. Didn't cover as 10.5-point favorites, but Philadelphia's won 4 straight. Now it's to see what they can do without Joel Embiid in the lineup. The Raptors and the Hawks, they meet for the first time this season, and they're hooking up here in Atlanta tonight. Hawks, they were really in a hole at one time. They've won and covered 7 straight, and 6 of those wins coming at home. They just beat the Lakers on Sunday without LeBron. They also beat up the Celtics. They beat the Heat. They beat the Bucks during this stretch. Toronto outlasted Miami in 3 overtimes, 124-120 on Saturday. That was his 2.5-point dogs. Toronto's still trying to seek some consistency because in their last 10 games, they're 4-6. Toronto lost 3 times to Atlanta last year, so big revenge game for the Raptors here, see if they can slow down the Hawks. So speaking of the Heat, they go to Boston tonight to face the Celtics. Miami, the best record in the Eastern Conference, 32-18. Celtics at 26-25. Boston's just been up and down the entire season, but more on the up. They've won 3 of 4. They beat Washington, Sacramento, New Orleans, but look, wins are wins. The Heat had their 3-game winning streak snapped by the Raptors, and the Heat, last time they played Boston, was earlier in the season, back in November. Celtics won it 95-78 in Miami. So a little bit of revenge there for the Heat in this one tonight. The Kings in New York against the Knicks. De'Aaron Fox still listed as questionable. First meeting between these teams this season. Sacramento has lost 6 in a row. They've dropped all 4 on their current road trip, but they've covered twice. They've been an 8-point dog or more in all 4 games. Now this is their lowest underdog spot. Got 10.5 at Philly. They were up for most of that game. And the Sixers came back in the second half, but the Kings ended up losing by 2. So they've lost 6 straight. New York, they're back at home. They've lost 3 in a row at Cleveland, Miami, and Milwaukee. They're 1-6 in their last 7, so the Knicks aren't any great shakes right now. And also New York 12-14 on the road, or at the Garden, this season. And the Kings, again, still waiting for De'Aaron Fox to see if he will suit up tonight. And he's missed the last few games with an ankle injury, and he still is his status still up in the air for the Kings tonight. The Warriors and the Rockets, they hook up in Houston, and Golden State a heavy favorite this evening, 37-13 on the season. The Warriors held off the shorthanded Nets on Saturday, 110-106. They've won 5 straight. They haven't been on the road in 2 weeks. Rockets have dropped 3 in a row. One of those losses did come at Golden State back 10 days ago, 105-103 as 13-point dogs. But the last 2 at home, lost by 30 to San Antonio, 15 to Portland. But in those games, they were getting 4.5 and 2.5, so now they're getting 10.5. And Golden State so far this season, they have beaten Houston twice by 13 and by 2. So now they're laying a bunch here on the road. Final NBA game of the night to look at, and all the games are early tonight. I mean, relatively early. There's no late games. Blazers and the Thunder in Oklahoma City. Blazers just lost at Chicago yesterday, 130-116. They've dropped 3 of 4. Thunder, they've dropped 9 of 10, and they've lost 7 in a row. The only win came at Brooklyn during the stretch. They lost in overtime to Indiana back on Saturday. They've lost back-to-back at home, in fact. And the Blazers did win at Houston as a short favorite back on Friday. And the one thing I like at Portland, though, they are now 5-2 against the spread in their last 7 on the road, 5-1 to the over their last 6. First meeting between these teams this season. Let's take a quick look at some of the college basketball for tonight. You got some decent matchups. Duke and Notre Dame inside the ACC. And Notre Dame is undefeated at home so far this season. And that number at 5.5, Duke at 17-3. Blue Devils beat up, they pulled away from Louisville on Saturday. Coach K's Blue Devils have won 3 in a row. Last 2 as a favorite on the road, one by 9 at Louisville, one by 12 at Wake Forest. Now they take on Notre Dame. And Notre Dame, this is an interesting scheduling spot for them because they get Duke tonight. Then they go to Miami on Wednesday. So a quick turnaround for them. So basically 3 games in 6 days. They just beat Virginia on Saturday. Notre Dame's won 4 in a row, and they're 9-0 at home. So we'll see what Notre Dame does as a dog tonight. Iowa and Penn State inside the Big Ten, and Penn State has had plenty of struggles. Iowa, meanwhile, like at times you don't know what you're really getting from Iowa. That's as simple as that. But the Hawkeyes, though, laying 4.5 at BetMGM. Iowa 14-6, Penn State at 8-9. Iowa off a 10-point loss to Purdue, and they've lost 2 of 3. But again, up and down at times for the Hawkeyes. Penn State has dropped 3 in a row. One of those defeats, a 17-point loss at Iowa back on January 22nd as 10-point dogs. They've lost 2 in a row, or they lost 3 straight, but the last 2 by 17 apiece at Indiana and at Ohio State. So they're back at home here. They beat Indiana and Rutgers at home. They covered against Purdue, so they're going to compete probably in Happy Valley. West Virginia and Baylor in the Big 12 this evening. West Virginia has been a big disappointment. I know 13-7, but still, the Mountaineers, they have dropped 5 in a row, lost at Arkansas in the Big 12 SEC Showdown Challenge, whatever you want to call it, on Saturday. And West Virginia lost by 9 to Arkansas, 10 to Oklahoma, 13 at Texas Tech, 9 to Baylor, which actually was a pretty competitive game, and by 26 at Kansas. They haven't won a game since January 11th. So West Virginia struggled. They're getting 14.5 here. Baylor off a 9-point loss at Alabama. But Baylor, they are 2-4 ATS, their last 6 as a double-digit favorite. So that is no good in that role. And Baylor had those back-to-back losses at home. They rebounded with 3 straight wins, but then losing to Alabama. Alabama's actually been very inconsistent, but they've beaten Houston, Gonzaga, and now Baylor. So figure that one out. Final game, we'll look at TCU and Oklahoma inside the Big 12. And TCU has actually been a very big surprise under Jamie Dixon, 14-4 this season. And TCU, 8-2 ATS the last 10. The 2 losses came at home at Texas and Baylor. Oklahoma was blown out at Auburn. They've lost 5 of 6. The only one came at West Virginia. So Oklahoma, they have had their struggles. TCU's played well. And the last time these teams played, TCU beat Oklahoma in Fort Worth 59-58 back 2 weeks ago. Total of 135 down to 127.5. So you had a low total in that one. It was 50-50 at the end of regulation. So now that total dropping 8 points between TCU and Oklahoma this evening in Norman. BetMGM, they are the king of sports books. You got that. And they are now alive and well in the state of Louisiana. BetMGM offers a welcome bonus for casino and sportsbook new users. Enter the bonus code VI bonus for a $25 no deposit free casino game, plus a 100% deposit match up to $1,000. Enter VI bonus in the BetMGM Sportsbook app to receive a $1,000 risk-free bet for your first wager. BetMGM is live in New York. It's live in Louisiana, among other states, Arizona, New Jersey, Tennessee, West Virginia, Mississippi, Washington, D.C., Indiana, Pennsylvania, Colorado, Iowa, Virginia, Michigan, Illinois, and Wyoming. That is BetMGM. You know who they are. They are the king of sports books. So my thanks to Dave Sharapan for joining us on the Daily Insider today. A lot of good information from him. And also you can hear that conversation or most of that conversation on the Bet and Collect podcast that's coming out later today. You can find that on most platforms, including Spotify, as well as Apple Play, Google Play, Spreaker, and iHeartRadio. I am Kevin Rogers. Thanks a lot for tuning in to this edition of the Daily Insider. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well on Vegas Insider. We greatly appreciate it. And as always, best of luck with your bets.